Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are looking at the last devblog for the Operation Heat, or the summer event that is coming to War Thunder starting on the 2nd of August. And this is for a rank 3 machine for Japan. It is of course the Yūdachi, or as it's known, the Nightmare of the Solomon Islands. This is a 1930s to 1940s machine, which overall seemed to be pretty useful at its role if we compare it to some of the other machines when it comes to War Thunder itself. It is definitely a little bit less than others and a little bit more than others, meaning that talking about the BR it may find itself in is a little bit hard to do. But what I want to do is I just want to read out some of this history section, because I thought it was a really interesting story about this thing, and I thought, why not just say it through the video. So first of all, this is a Shiratsuyu class, which I am saying completely wrong. It is slightly different to the standard Shiratsuyu, so we'll go through the differences, but here we go. So, especially noteworthy is the Yūdachi's final battle in November of 1942, when, after a nocturnal assault, the small ship found herself at the head of a large squadron that had literally collided headfirst with American ships defending the Solomon Islands. The American formation was thrown into chaos by this unexpected encounter between the fleets. The ships from the opposing sides began to maneuver, changing course, and eventually became inextricably intermingled. This led to a horrific 40-minute close combat in which the Yūdachi found herself behind the enemy front line. Seeing that the squadron's flagship, the battleship H.E.A.T, was taking heavy fire, the commander of the Yūdachi steered his ship into the thickest part of the battle. The destroyer wound up between two ships, both of which attacked her at once, the USS Juneau, a light cruiser, and the USS Aaron Ward, a destroyer. Taking hit after hit, the Yūdachi tried to torpedo the Juneau. The next torpedo volley hit the USS Portland, the hull of which was massively breached as a result. Parts of the damaged aft section caused a bump steer, and the ship could only move in circles until the end of the battle. Unceasingly firing her artillery at the enemy ships, the Yūdachi mistook the destroyer USS H.E.A.T for a friendly vessel, where she paid for her mistake. The H.E.A.T disabled the Japanese ship's powertrain with a torpedo volley, immobilizing the Yūdachi, where surviving crew members were evacuated. It wasn't until following morning that the heavy cruiser, the USS Portland, which had been hit by the little destroyer, sank the brave ship with 6 volleys. So you can see that this ship, at least in its dying breath, definitely punched above its weight compared to what it should have done if you compare it to light and heavy cruisers which it was fighting at the time. So let's talk about some interesting stuff about it. The Yūdachi really heavily relies on its main weaponry. It has 5 127mm primary guns. You can actually find these on many of the Japanese destroyers, including the Fubuki, which has 3 sets of dual 127mm. So the difference between something like the Fubuki and the Yūdachi is the Yūdachi is down 1 gun. You can see it has 2 on the front and then 3 on the back. Instead of the standard 6, you have only 5. On top of this as well, the standard Shiratsuyu class has access to only a few 13.2mm. Now what is nice about the Yūdachi is they've actually increased that to 2 single-barreled 40mm turrets, and the 40mm turrets that it should be getting are the ones that you find on the H.E.A.T. Now unfortunately the H.E.A.T has access to dual-barreled or dual-cannoned 40mm. So just imagine this in a single form, and that is basically what you're getting. So you're going to get, probably these are H.E.D.F rounds, which are high explosive distance fuse. So these are going to be incredibly good against AA, but you only get 2 of them, which is why for me, when I look at the Yūdachi, it seems a little bit lower than a lot of its compatriots when it comes to its firepower. The other thing is that it can go 34 knots, so around about 60 kilometers an hour, which is a pretty good speed, but doesn't really set it apart from the other machines which are around it. And it also has 180 crew, which if you compare it to the other destroyers, the Matsuki has 271, Fubuki 197, Yugamo 228, and the Akizuki 263. So it's the least out of all of these destroyers. So it has more firepower than the Matsuki when it comes to its main armament, but the other ones it has less power than when it comes to the amount of firepower on its main guns. So it's got one of the least amounts of firepower. Basically one gun less than the majority of the machines. It doesn't have a lot of AA cover, but then again, these destroyers generally don't have any AA cover as well, apart from, of course, the Akizuki, which is a mainly AA machine. And also its speed is very similar to the other Japanese destroyers. So for me, this is a destroyer which, if we look at its overall power level, is going to be a middling one. It's not going to be the best, but that might actually work out in its favor. And the reason for this is, as we go through the tiers when it comes to naval, one of the things that is very apparent is that there should be some form of wall between battle boats to destroyers and destroyers to light cruisers. Light cruisers are designed to annihilate destroyers. Destroyers are designed to annihilate stuff like PT boats and battle boats. So you have these weird brackets of power where if you get down tiered in a destroyer you do really well, but if you get up tiered it's a bit of a struggle. So if we take a machine which is similar to the Fubuki but doesn't have as many guns but does have a little bit more AA power, then it may sit around the 4.0 mark and therefore kind of stay away from the light cruisers, which would bully it a hell of a lot. Like if you have a look at it, let's say this thing's 4.0, the Yūdachi, which I believe it's going to be, since it's very similar in armament to the Fubuki, since this has it has slightly better AA armament in the 240s, slightly worse main armament in the 5.127s, and it also has the torpedo launchers, where it has basically 8 torpedo launchers with 610mm torpedoes. So now once again slightly worse once again than the Fubuki. So at a 4.0 BR it's going to stay away from a lot of the bruisers which are incredibly good at that level. So the Brooklyn, which everybody points to, the Nuremberg and the Kern, which are struggling against stuff like the Brooklyn, the Krim and the Kirov you stay away from, and of course the Leander and the Southampton as well, and the Tiger, the last gift vehicle from the Bassfield Engineer event. So being at that 4.0 BR, it actually means it's allowed to be a vehicle instead of cannon fodder for other light and heavy cruisers. So for me, that's great for it. It also gives a lot of people the opportunity to grind through the Japanese tree. I personally struggled with the Japanese tree. I have tried my best to try and do some of rank 1. I will probably get through it now with this event. I'm probably going to try my best to grind some of these machines so I can use them for the event itself. But it's been a bit of a struggle because a lot of these machines here are not very good. The Karo Tai has been okay, the Type 5 has been okay because of its big gun, and the T-38's been alright, but the other ones it's not been great, and I can just tell that these two are going to be useless, and the CH2 and the CH8 should be alright. So if you're a person who is looking to get into Japanese naval, this is a great addition. It isn't as good as the Kiyoshimo, which has a ton of AA armament on it. It has more guns than you and more AA and more torpedoes. Like if you really want to get into Japan, this is the one to go for. But if you want a vehicle for, technically free that you can get through this event, add a slightly lower BR, because there's no way that this thing comes in at 4.3, right? If it'll come in at a lower BR and it'll be useful because of that. It also should have a pretty cool skin on it, hopefully, when it comes into the game. So overall, it's got a nice primary armament. It's got pretty much average everything else, and also the Bofors, sorry, not Bofors, the 40mm, which have the H.E.A.T, should be able to kill a lot of planes coming in. It's very much a middling destroyer, but after getting the HMS Tiger from the Battlefield event, I feel like this is a much better fit for Operation Heat, especially since it's Japanese. I'm really happy to see Japan get some representation when it comes to this event, and in the form of a destroyer is the perfect way of doing it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Martinez, Moxie, Alobralo, Super Cacti, Grisvolk, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.